The global migrant crisis is playing out in Christmas nativity scenes around the world. In Italy, this display shows the Holy Family as migrants drowning in a sea of plastic made by a local parish in the small southern town of Acco della Fonte. It depicts Mary and Joseph as two migrants trying to stay afloat with Jesus placed on a flotation device. The idea is to show the difficulty migrants face in crossing the Mediterranean Sea, plus it shines a light on plastic waste in the world's oceans.
This is simply an installation that speaks about two objective messages, one related to plastic pollution and one related to family. A common family that in this case is in a plastic sea, but it could also be a sea of trouble or in any problem that a family in the world faces daily.
Meanwhile, in the United States, this installation in a Massachusetts church puts baby Jesus inside a black metal cage as part of its nativity scene in a bid to draw attention to the ongoing global refugee and immigration crises. Shielded by a screen of glass, the nativity scene features a sign with the message "Peace on Earth?" While it caused a storm among some conservatives in America, most of the local community of the church did not feel it crossed a political line. The head pastor of St. Susanna Parish saying it's designed to represent the separation of families on the United States border with Mexico.
The idea of the nativity was to mirror in the nativity what's happening in the world. So we put a fence there to illustrate the separation of peoples, and we put a barrier around Jesus to show the separation of families which is taking place at our border. It's what's our response when people come seeking a better way of life, to live in safety and peace. We're met with soldiers and tear gas. That seems to be our response.
And as world powers look to alleviate the migrant crisis, the United Nations conference in Morocco has adopted a migration pact billed as the first international document on managing migration. The number of people on the move globally has surged to more than 250 million, but at least 9 countries pulled out of the accord, many citing a possible threat to national sovereignty. Among the string of withdrawals, the United States and Australia, which says it won't sign up to a deal which could compromise its hardline immigration policy. There are also fence-sitters, including Israel and Bulgaria, which say they're still deciding. Now, while 164 out of the 193 UN member countries have signed the pact, it's caused domestic rifts, with Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel seeing the biggest party in his coalition quit in a dispute over the accord. Chile has withdrawn from the pact, saying migration is not a human right. The pact is meant to foster cooperation on migration. Those in favour say the burden needs to be shared.
We all know that illegal migration, because of the different opportunities for development in the world, causes big fears in our countries. And those fears are used by those who oppose this pact in order to spread fake news. But in the core, the discussion about this pact and its importance is about the principle of multilateral cooperation.
But whether their movement is voluntary or forced, and whether or not they have been able to obtain formal authorization for movement, all human beings must have their human rights respected and their dignity upheld. To deny these and to vilify any group of people is the road to dehumanization and horror. We must not succumb to fear or false narratives.
And joining me in studio, immigration lawyer Tsvi Kan-Tor. Mr. Kan-Tor, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Now, the idea of this UN pact is, of course, for cooperation. Why would some countries disagree or not want to do their part?
Because this country are of the opinion that they should have complete control over whoever allowed to come into the country, and some people feel that immigration and economical immigration, job seekers, should not be considered as a human right per se.
What's your take on that? Is migration not a human right?
This is a matter of an opinion. The idea of anyone allowed to come into my house is sometimes not a blessing.
The countries that are choosing to open their borders and do their part for the migration crisis, Is it their view that you're saying they're not going to have control of their borders? They still have control of their borders.
No, they don't, because if immigration will become a human right that you cannot deny, then the European country
I don't
will
think that's what the idea is, that they have to let them in. That they still have control of their borders. It's just about sharing the load and sharing the burden and working with greater cooperation.
This, according to their opinion and according to the facts, it put a hell of a lot of pressure on all the social system in Germany, in Italy, and Greece, and other countries. And you see that the service that is can be provided to the local citizen that actually paid for it is substantially reduced. If you allow free access to education system, health system, if you have to provide social payment to anyone who chooses to come to your country without your blessing, then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation whereby the community has to support many people. Does cooperation
not allow countries to become better equipped at being able to carry the load when these migrants are coming into their countries?
Well, no, it doesn't give them any way to improve their ability to carry the load. It only provides the job seekers with the right to move and work whenever they want. And many countries reject it. The big thing about this treaty is the declaration that immigration will become human right. That will eventually affect the legislation and co-decision in many countries, even if it will not be legislated locally. Because this treaty, in order to become effective, will have to be legislated in each and every single country, any signatory country.
People that are fleeing to the West from Africa and from the Middle East are fleeing from conflict zones, and they're fleeing to not only have a better life, but to have their lives saved, to be able to stay alive. Is that not a human right?
This is something different. If you are fleeing because of hardship and severe condition like in Syria, then you are a refugee. The refugee treaty exists as of 1952. This treaty is not talking about, is not limited to refugee, and is not protected, doesn't offer any additional protection to refugees, none whatsoever, because they already enjoy this protection. This treaty is all about job seekers and economical immigration. People that decided that instead of being in Chad or Ghana, they would have better life in Germany.
Well, I suppose if the systems in the countries were more robust to be able to process people's claims and really identify whether they are in fact fleeing for their lives and genuine asylum seekers or economic migrants, perhaps that would be of benefit to both the migrants and the countries.